Clubhouse. 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 Thank you. Clubhouse. Clubhouse. Thank you. Clubhouse. 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 Clubhouse.
Thank you.
You know, there are a lot of... I never thought that had happened. That happened in the last 6 months. I never thought that Majid Maroon Taouk, my first cousin and the godfather of my second child, would go behind my back and steal money from me. I never thought that my auntie Rada would help call the police on me about 4 times. I never thought that my cousin Danny would be so malicious and lie and, how do you say, it was just so easy for him to listen to my Uncle Charlie, a woman-bashing molester, over the advice and say spirit of his father, literally the most moral and upstanding person in Butchery. I never thought that my father would assist my family in calling the police on me, you know. I never thought that Saeed and Majid would willfully call the police on me and then willfully go to the police station and begin answering questions to the police to my absolute detriment. And you know what? When I thought back to everything that they did, I thought to myself, you idiot, Andrew. You should have known. There were signs everywhere. And you're right. I should have known. And there were signs everywhere. Saeed's bucks. Majid's WhatsApp. Right? Just full of topless waitresses. I should have known that Majid would steal money from me after finding out that he maxed out his credit card within a few months. You know, he has the same issue as my father with money. I didn't realize that they'd be so open and giving to my father, the junkie, drug addict, drug dealer. They must have been operating under some sort of odd delusion. I really don't understand it. Did they not see my father? Did Ami Maroon forget the haki? It's called the haki. Yeah, did Ami Maroon forget the haki? Did Martami Rosa forget that she wailed at me, saying the most vile, disgusting things about Auntie Rada? Auntie Rada's a fucking slut, that fucking bitch. What the fuck brought her here to Sydney? And my brother, why did that fucking cunt listen to the devil Charlie and come here and bring her family to Sydney? Those are Martami Rosa's words that she said in front of me, Christina, Saeed's wife, and Saeed. She won't admit to it because she's a liar, right? She allies with junkies and woman bashers comfortably, right? You know, and it, you know, I remember, that doesn't matter. I don't want to tell the story about her brother in Lebanon. There been rumors about her brother in Lebanon raping little girls. Not little girls, raping adolescent women in the village. Tony Montana, right? Yeah, I think she was just trying to hide her shame. I think that's what it must have been. You know, Martami Rosa called Auntie Rada a cunt first, just so that's clear. It doesn't matter. but they'll never admit it. And I think that's why they're so angry all the time. They're hiding so much venom. Just let it out. It's all good. This episode is brought to you by the destruction of my Uncle Zou Zou's life. I was thinking about my Uncle Zou Zou and the fact that I haven't really spoken much about him. And the only time that I've spoken about him perhaps was positive. And I think that that's unfair because he certainly deserves an episode devoted to his immorality, let's just say. But there really isn't much of it. To me, he's a pathetic wretch. He hasn't really harmed anyone other than his children and his wife. But he's that sort of put upon man where for years people were just dumping their trash into him and onto him, you know. He stayed at 17 Villiers Street, the House of the Devil, for years, just being tortured, tormented, and traumatized by the sins of my father, let's say, right? My brother and Uncle Tony were abandoned to live in that house with Ami Zou Zou, and no one helped them. The only reason why Ami Zou Zou was there is because he was just as vulnerable and just as hurt as Ami, Done, and my brother. And no one had any interest in helping them. Rather, what they wanted to do was hide their shame. So they brought Amtirada into the House of the Devil, perhaps for her to clean it up. Has she not realized that her husband has been suffering from significant depression since he got here? Perhaps she blames me. You know, that's convenient. Perhaps. She obviously blames me. I know women like that. It's a little bit like my mum. She's borrowed that from my father. A person that refuses to ever acknowledge any wrong that he's ever done, even though he is the wrongest person. His existence, his whole being is in the wrong direction. It's wrong. His nose, his mouth, his scowl, his fat body. The fact that he doesn't... The location of his body. Where is it? It's not even in Lebanon, right? That'd make sense. It's in Qatar, where he's very far away. Struggling in his own way. Apparently, I have a feeling that the $50,000 he gave to his friend who's a drug dealer was borrowed from Nana. And that's why she wouldn't help me. Because she thought that if she helped me, that she'd lose the $50,000 or the $70,000 that she lent my dad. And I hope it's $50,000. Because if they got the $120,000 or $130,000 to buy out Sharb al-Jaja from Nana, then yeah, that's kind of odd. But I don't think that that's where they got the money. Saeed and Ami Maroon had another friend that would lend them money, but they still have to pay back that money. And now they don't really have much of an income to do that because they're in so much debt, because they listened to my father, Majid, Saeed, Taouk. And it's okay if they still want to blame me. You know, that's okay. Like Jesus Christ, right? You know, I'll sort of slip into that kind of, view and be like, okay, Jesus Christ was literally crucified. So, yeah, crucify me. You've been doing that all of your life. Oh, God, the weirdo Andrew is the cause of everyone's problem in Bat Asad. How lovely. I don't know, I'm kind of flattered in a way. You know, my Uncle Zou Zou had to live in that house without any help or any support, and all he got was ridicule for the family. He was there was one occasion where he was doing a job with Saeed, and he had to change perhaps a PowerPoint or something very simple. But he stood there looking at the PowerPoint for a while thinking, I think he had his, hands on his temple and was just like, what do I do? And he was thinking. And Saeed filmed it of him thinking for a long time about something that's quite simple and sent that to all his friends. Oh, look at my dumb uncle. He has to take ages just to think about something simple. Dude, he's an epileptic. And he's got a lot going on in his mind. Probably has, look, I'm pretty sure he has what I have because of the epilepsy. But he has what I have and epilepsy on top. So his mind must be this raging storm of emotions and thoughts constantly, just like Ami Sharbel. And uh, v- um, that video that Saeed took of his uncle mocking him is so disgusting in hindsight when you think about it. Because Saeed doesn't think, he just does. And he'll fail in life because he does that. And he's failed in life because he did that. You see, to me, doing a job and not getting paid for the job is pretty simple. That's a pretty simple civil case. But Saeed didn't tell me that he went and insulted the client at Bellevue Hills and threatened him, right? Because he wasn't thinking. The client didn't really care about the job or the contract. He just wanted to take Saeed to court to, like rake him over the coals, because that's where the client at Bellevue Hill shines. And Saeed didn't think of that. He also didn't think of the long-term consequence of him going to the police, especially given the fact that his father sent an email to workers' compensation to tell them that it's not an operational company. I'm very much long-term, right? That's a damning piece of evidence that I have that I will absolutely use against Saeed and his father. Absolutely, I will. Yeah, right? Because I don't go to the police, right? I go to lawyers and magistrates, right? Because I think that that's fairer, right? The police aren't, this kind of organization of finesse, love, and understanding, right? They're there to protect citizens from direct harm. I was never a direct harm to Saeed and Majid. That's why I never sent them any messages directly. It was, I was trying to make the people around them understand how much of a horrible person, how horrible they both were becoming and are and were. And I was right. So Ami Zou Zou thinks a lot and feels a lot, let's just say. And so, yeah, he really didn't have much of a choice. God, he was between a rock and a hard place. His pride prevented him from going back to his wife and apologizing for making the wrong decision to come to Australia. So he wouldn't go back to France. And so he was just stuck here in limbo, being tortured by my family. He sank into alcoholism. It was pretty bad what my family had done to him. But it makes sense. Look what they did to my brother. Look what they did to my Uncle Tony. And look what they were trying to do to me. And look what they did to me in 6 months. Thank God I'm stronger than my Uncle Zou Zou and my brother and my Uncle Tony. And I'm actually fighting for something, my wife and kids, right? That I actually care for and love for. That I care for and love for. That I care and love. I know that I made mistakes, but I'm confronting my mistakes head on to resolve them. My mistake was working with my family and putting myself under so much pressure. It's really all it was, to be honest. Of course, I made so many financial mistakes. I was so misguided with money because I didn't have anyone guiding me. Right? Consider the people around me. A drug dealer, my father, a laborer who idolizes his younger brother being a drug dealer, Ami Maroon, right? Ami Sharbel, an unhinged maniac, an epileptic, right? Who basically built his wealth off his family, off of stealing money from his family, I should say. Ami Sharbel built his wealth off of stealing money from his family. So he wasn't really a good influence, right? And I only failed because I was doing the right thing in a den of thieves, right? I was doing the right thing in an organization full of liars and criminals and cheats and thieves. And that's what the last 6 months proved to me, and I hope to the wider Lebanese Maronite community in Sydney, as well as Australia, the world, and absolutely Lebanon. I do not want my Auntie Rada to go back to Sehta Saide proud. Fuck her and her pride, you know what I mean? And her son, right? The only reason why I want Auntie Rada back there is for the sake of her husband who's being tortured, but she wouldn't have realized. She doesn't realize because she's been so she's acclimated to depression and anxiety. Yeah, to her husband's just being normal. Yeah, of course he's oversleeping. Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They're free to make their own decisions, and they're free to listen to whomever they want to listen to. When my uncle Zou Zou came back to Sydney after his father had passed away, it was something that everyone in the family loathed him for, because he didn't go to his father's funeral, right? But he did come back to Sydney to, picket his father's assets like a vulture, right? Like an urchin, like a pathetic urchin, which is what my uncle is. My uncle Zou Zou is a pathetic urchin, He doesn't get some lovely episode. He's not Rida or David Romanos, He's not Johnny Dunje, He's not my heroes. He's a pathetic urchin that I have to help because no one will help him. When he came back to Australia, his brother Sharbel wouldn't give him any money, right? And he was so reliant on that money that it reduced him to tears. And then he couldn't go back to France. I don't know why, but he should have gone back to France. But he stayed here, and I think he worked on that dossier full of documents relating to my Uncle Charlie and the NCAT hearing and his enduring power of attorney of his mother, Mariam, because Ami Zou Zou knew straight away that something was up, right? Any person with just a whiff of common sense would see that Ami Shad was doing something really sus. Like, this is really weird. Why so soon after the death of their father was Ami Sharbel being so quick to put everything in his name? It's because he wanted to use it for himself and to enrich himself, because he'd already had a taste of that a couple of years before, because my Uncle Maroon gave him $200,000. My Uncle Maroon gave my Uncle Charlie $200,000. No punishment, no anything. It's your money, all good. And he used it, he blew it, perhaps on cocaine and prostitutes like Majid, my first cousin. Because remember, Majid got $100,000 and that was pissed away within a week, right? So my family's really good at pissing away money. And so my Uncle Charlie pissed away all that money and then put everything in his name and lived off the rental income of Redfern for 10 years. Lordy loo. And the only time he gave people money was when he put Maroon back as director so he could put a loan so you can get a construction loan for $900,000 against Ami Maroon's name, right? So that Ami Maroon would be liable if there was an issue. Puts about $600,000 towards the construction of 17 Villiers Street duplex. For the construction of the duplex at 17 Villiers Street, he put $600,000, and for the remainder went into his property at 36 Villiers Street, and obviously in his pocket. And the family let it happen, and they were just proud of it. They advertised it. Hey, look how cool my Uncle Charlie. Look how cool Charlie is. Look how much money he has. Look how awesome he is. Yeah, all on the death of his father, you know. To me, all of his wealth is evil. It's like a drug money, you know. That's why, I think of 17 Villiers Street as the house of the damned, right? They'll feel it. It's a cursed house, even with incense. There's just so much bad karma in that house. The police would go there at least once a year, since they moved in, you know. At times it was Ami Tone, then it was Ami Sharbel, sometimes it was my dad. But yeah, man, it just never stopped. And so they brought Amti Rada and her lovely husband here, perhaps to make it stop. No, it won't stop, it'll just make them worse off. The police were called when I tried to kill my father, when I had him wrapped in a headlock. The police were called shortly before that to, because my family didn't want Amitone to live at 17 Villiers Street anymore. So they called the police. My family called the police, between Ami Maroon and Amti Rada and Ami Sharbel, at least 12 times. It's absolutely disgusting. So my uncle Zou Zou had a dossier full of damning evidence against my Uncle Charlie that he wanted to use at the NCAT hearing. And I think essentially what Ami Zou Zou wanted was to either remove Ami Sharbel as the power of attorney, as the attorney for his mother, or he wanted the whole enduring power of attorney sort of idea kind of trashed, because he saw that was just a way for Ami Sharbel to use their parents' assets for his own benefit. But my uncle Zou Zou was stopped by my father. He was convinced otherwise. How does the story go? Ami Zou Zou didn't take my Uncle Charlie to NCAT because my father convinced him not to, because he said that, number one, he wouldn't get what he wanted, and number two, it was bad and shameful to take family members to court, right? So my Uncle Zou Zou listened to my father, trusted my father, trusted that, he knew best, let's say. And my father didn't know best. My father just didn't want to be embarrassed because he's a drug dealer and he didn't want attention put on him, right? So basically all that my Uncle Zou Zou did was allow my father to just continue being a criminal. My father couldn't care less about the fact that there was so much pressure on my Uncle Zou Zou, and he needed money, and he needed his share, because he wanted to build a life with his family in France with his share. And so because Ami Zou Zou did not pursue anything, did not pursue the case against my Uncle Charlie, that emboldened my Uncle Charlie. So he thought, right, look at me, I could put anything in my name and no one will stop me, and no one can stop me. That's the lesson that my Uncle Charlie learned. And it got more cynical than that. It's like, right. Yeah, you're going to try to take me to court? You're going to try to stop me from doing what I think is right? Well, screw you. I'm going to show you who's right in the end. And by the way, that's what happened. Ami Sharbel, because of that initial NCAP meeting, was scared, right, that his family was going to pursue something against him. So he became more steadfast in his belief that he needs to get a family trust. And he constructed the family trust in such a way that my uncle Zou Zou wasn't able to touch the assets. My father wasn't able to touch the assets. Like, that's what the consequence of my father's advice was. It made the Ami Sharbel stronger, better, bolder. Good work, Dad. You are a buffoon of the highest order. You are such a pathetic person. You ruined Ami Zou Zou's life because he trusted you. What was your plan, by the way? How were you ever going to get the assets back into someone's name, Dad? Like, what were you going to do? Because I did it. I removed Charlie and I put my Uncle Maroon as director. And at that point, he could have done whatever he wanted. I think even my Uncle Zou Zou understood that. That's why he came to my house to beg me for money, because he knew that I was the only one that was actually working to his favor. You know, I was working with him. I was trying to help my family members. That's why whoever asked received money. And the fact that they turn around and said that I was the thief, it's really hurtful, you know? I received $25,000 from Battler back in March, and that money was had to be spent on credit cards and all that sort of stuff. It disappeared. But what I haven't told anyone is that I gave Zou Zou $10,000 out of that $25,000. That was around the time that he had organized to steal $100,000 from me from TQM. But it is what it is, you know. Zou Zou did it because he had pressure from the family, and I forgive him. But I especially forgived him when I found out that he used the money for Charlie's butchery, Taouk Butchery, TAWK Butchery. And I bet you Zou Zou didn't even give Charlie $10,000. And if he didn't, I'm calling you out in this podcast that you owe Charlie $10,000, because that's the only reason why I gave you $10,000, Zou Zou. You better give it to Charlie. You better have given it to Charlie, because if you haven't, I mean, I don't care. It is what it is. It's your choice. I'm sort of past the emotion of it all, but that's what the original intention was. And remember, I was going through extreme psychological damage, right? And a lot of issues, right? The fact that even in my worst, I was more charitable than my father has ever been. I don't know, made me feel good. Made me feel that it's okay. I'll lose everything, but it's only temporary. I'll get it back in the long run. So my uncle now is living in Lithgow, Ami Zou Zou. And I think it'll all work out fine for him. You know, there's something special about Lithgow. And I think it's because my uncle loves nature. He loves gardening. He loves the countryside. And so much has been stolen from him that he was prevented from, let's say, fully expressing the kind of person that he is inside, right? But I think once he removes himself from the disgusting negative influence of his brothers and sisters, he'll be a lot better off. I remember him in France when he was thousands of kilometers away from his family, and he was far better off there. My God, what a bad gamble. You know what I mean? That's what the gamble was. He'll come to Australia and things will work out. he didn't realize that he forgot that he'd moved away from Australia because there was so much bad blood. There was so much toxic negative influence in Australia. And I think he discovered shortly after his arrival back to Australia from France that that's just the way that it was going to be. And so rather than acknowledging that, he just denied it, ignored it, you know, just like everyone in my family does. When there's an inconvenient problem, they just ignore it. Nah, it's not me. You know, it's... what excuse did Ami Zou Zou say? Of course, yeah, of course I'm here. I'm here with my family. What do you want me to do in France? Just hang out with my wife and kids? There's no one for me to hang out with. I have no friends in France. Bro, you had no friends in Sydney for so long. Anyway. Do you think that this podcast will cut through? I don't know. Let's see. Big up to Rida. Big up to David Romanos. Big up to Johnny Taouk. Johnny Dunje. Big up to Youssef Ibn Kholi Mansour. Oh, and just a special note to the Taouk Association. Thank you so much for being so patient with me, but also thank you so much for supporting Tony's family, you know, in the best way that you know how, as funeral caterers. Youssef was telling me that the Taouk Association goes around and collects money from family members in lieu of flowers, and they give that money to, you know, the deceased, the closest relative or anything, or whatever. And they did that for Markholi. That was so sweet. You know, that's kind of lovely support, you know. Not, you know, like they could do more, but I just want to focus on how lovely and beautiful that is. And the fact that obviously she didn't accept it. She asked for that money to be given to the Khun, which is where her family lives, and it's a part of Lebanon that's quite poor, even relative to, you know, other parts of Lebanon, and they obviously need it more than her. That's so humbling, isn't it? You know, her son passed away, and, you know, she's still into charity. Man, that's lovely. Yeah. I think that's a good palate cleanser to finish on. Markholi Salam, you absolute angel, the best that the Lebanese Maronites have to offer, and the best cook in Australia. Yeah, I said it. What are you going to do? All right. Love you.